Or what?
They're leaning into woke. Hardcore.
They're petrified of some kind of backlash.
Who wants a movie about true love? What kind of woman do we want out there seeking true love, Eliana? It's the outrage.
I wanted my money back. It was very disappointing.
They are pretending like Rachel Zegler is the first of them all when she looks like Lord Farquaad in the film.
Every way that Disney changed the story, it changed it for the worse.
The new Disney boss babe, who is Rachel Zegler, the inverse of happy.
So she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
No one on the right side of America can stand the star of this movie.
Rachel Zegler, like so many kids raised on TikTok, she's all for infertility is the only global solution.
So apparently, according to them and according to the writers of Snow White, women can't even want to be in love anymore.
Now, I'm guessing that she's not married. I'm guessing that she doesn't have kids. The movie is a complete disaster, by the way.
Rachel Zegler, she's
Rachel Zegler is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged.
And, you know the saying, go woke, get broke, and Disney's going to lose money on this movie. And I believe it only made less than $1 million in China.
They spent $170 million to make the thing, and it had the lowest opening, under $50 million, of any of these live-action Disney remakes that they've ever had.
One, Rachel Zegler didn't just take on the role of Snow White. She lit a fire under the entire Disney fandom and turned the remake into one of the most talked about scandals in Hollywood. This wasn't your typical fairy tale reboot. No,
the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird.
She's not going to be safe with a prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love.
Oh my God.
From the jump, it became clear this wasn't going to be the sweet classic Disney tale people grew up loving, and it all started when West Side Story's Rising Star was cast as the iconic Snow White. At first, fans were hyped to fresh face. Big talent, what could go wrong? Well then, Rachel started talking, and she didn't hold back. In early interviews, she straight up trashed the original Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs from 1937, calling it weird, outdated, and hinting that it was full of tired, useless ideas. She made it sound like Disney's beloved first princess movie belonged in the trash. That's when the backlash really started to brew. Hardcore Disney fans felt like she was mocking the very found of the franchise. People who grew up loving the original saw her as smug, like she thought she was above the role and the legacy that came with it. But that wasn't even the worst of it.
President Rachel Zegler also posted, F Trump kinds of posts on social media. She also said that she hoped that Trump supporters, quote, never know peace.
But you are not entitled to call for Trump supporters to be harmed. Like, you are actually not entitled to do that. And so let me just remind you, Rachel Zegler, of what the map looks like, just so you can understand when your Disney movie is coming out, how many people you are wishing harm upon. Like, this is America right now. I will love you through these 4 years as best I can. F Donald Trump. Yeah, totally stable thing for her to be posting, wishing harm upon Trump voters, wishing that we have no peace.
Rachel's interview started diving into politics, and she didn't just share her opinion. She went off. She came for an entire section of Americans, aiming pointed words at supporters of a former U.S. president. Her message, according to online clip and reactions, she basically said anyone who voted for him should go away and never find peace. That's a heavy hit, and it exploded all over social media. Suddenly, this wasn't just about a fairy tale anymore. The casting choice, the interviews, the attitude, it all clashed into a giant PR mess. What was supposed to be a magical Disney reboot spiraled into a full-blown cultural lightning rod, and people weren't just annoyed, they were furious. People who were still undecided about Disney's live-action Snow White suddenly had a reason to jump ship. And fast forward, many, it wasn't just about a movie anymore. It was personal. They didn't want to pour money into a project starring someone who came off as openly hostile toward a massive chunk of the country. Sure, Rachel Zegler eventually came out with an apology, but let's be real. Critics weren't buying it. The vibe was off. The tone felt rehearsed. Some even called it PR damage control in a sparkly dress. Meanwhile, Disney tried to sell this reboot as a fresh, empowered, boring take on a timeless tale, but instead of respectfully modernizing the 1937 classic, they went full demolition mode. The heart of the story gone to magic. fizzled out.
And they postponed the release of this thing, Ben, for a year because their star, Rachel Zegler, was so unlikable, told all Trump supporters that they could off, excuse me, but she did. That was just in November. They didn't even know she was going to do that one.
Zegler herself seemed proud of the changes. In multiple interviews, she boasted about cutting the romance and scrapping the love story altogether. Snow White doesn't need a man, she declared, and while sure nobody's mad at a strong and independent lead, that wasn't the issue. Fans were mad that the entire fairy tale charmed the emotional warmth and the sweet romance that made the original so beloved had been tossed like yesterday's. Script in the original The Prince was part of Snow White's hope her rescue her. Joy, now he was shoved to the side like a background extra, barely speaking barely. Seen in giving major random guy in the with energy even the evil queen lost her. Fight, once driven by jealousy of Snow White's beauty, she was now just another bland villain chasing power, no iconic. Mirror seen no obsession with fairest. Of them all, just nothing Disney didn't. Just update Snow White, they gutted it, rebranded it, and left a lot of fans wondering if it was even the same story at all.
And then she came out and she said, I apologize. Like, I went too far. But it wasn't sincere.
The sweet, nostalgic songs that once made Snow White feel like a dream gone completely. Erased, in their place, Disney dropped a set of brand new tracks that critics quickly tore apart, calling them hollow, preachy, and totally out of touch with. The fairy tale spirit gone was the magic, and in came the musical equivalent of a lecture, but it didn't stop there. Rachel Zegler took things even further by calling the classic Prince, yep, the one. Generations fell in love with a stalker. She spoke about the original 1937 romance like it was some creepy horror story instead of the arming innocent tale millions grew up watching. Fans who once teared up at Someday My Prince Will come or left stunned watching the story they cherished get ripped to shreds and labeled outdated trash, and just when people thought it couldn't get messier.
The movie has a major identity crisis.
This is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive.
The movie is doing catastrophically. They spent $300 million, and it currently has a 2.2 out of 10 rating on IMDb.
I sat through the whole thing. This was really bad. It was extremely leftist on every political dimension: racial politics, sexual politics, class politics, regime politics. Its narrative was cowardly. It was just awful.
It's got extra musical numbers that are incredibly unnecessary that really add to that runtime. And let me go ahead and let you know that they're absolutely f***ing atrocious.
Disney deleted Someday My Prince Will Come and made a modernized feminist alternative.
They say all you have to do to make your wish come true is let it echo, 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 echo.
It's awful, generic. Never mind that the lyrics make no sense at all. All you have to do to make your dream come true is let it echo. Is it like on a metaphorical level? What is
Bam Ziegler's old social media posts resurfaced. Let's just say they weren't exactly full of Disney sparkle in these resurfaced tweets and videos. She mocked Trump voters, calling them all kinds of nasty names and even wishing them a life without peace. Those comments didn't sit right even with people who didn't like Trump. The tone was just too much, too personal, too hostile. And when you're starring as a Disney princess insulting millions of families, many with diverse political views, isn't exactly a smart box office move. As Backlash snowballed, Disney went into full-on panic mode. The marketing machine kicked in hard, scrambling to protect the brand. PR reps worked overtime trying to clean up the mess, pushing out softer press angles and polishing Ziegler's image. But guess what? She wasn't having it. Instead of dialing it down, Ziegler doubled down on talk shows and interviews everywhere. She made it clear she wasn't apologizing for her views. I stand by my convictions, she insisted time and time again. And while standing firm is one thing, doubling down in the middle of a PR wildfire, that's a whole different game. It turned a fairy tale comeback into a reputation meltdown, and the internet wasn't letting it go. But social media wasn't done with Rachel Zegler. Not even close. Screenshots, quotes, and old interviews kept getting reposted everywhere, and the backlash just kept building. One viral tweet summed up the mood perfectly. She hates half of us, and then expects us to buy. Her movie tickets, that kind of post, didn't just get likes, it sparked full-on boycott campaigns across TikTok X, formerly Twitter, YouTube, and beyond. People weren't just annoyed anymore, they were done. And when the film finally hit, theaters and numbers flopped hard. That opening weekend wasn't just bad, it was embarrassing for a Disney princess movie. And the drama didn't stop at Zler.
Accusing Disney of inserting unnecessary feminism into classic fairy tales.
These big bad feminists now are telling us that's ridiculous. How dare you want to meet a handsome prince and be swept off of your feet and live happily ever after? No, you should want to be the prince. You should want to go out and fight the bad guys with a sword.
So no prince or a different kind of prince? I'm sure a lot of people will assume it's a love story just because like we cast a guy in the movie. Right. Andrew Burnap, great dude. Yeah. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
Who the hell are you to say all of Andrew's scenes could get cut? Like, who are you?
Oh my God.
Are you Disney? I've read your book, and I have. It's a phenomenal book. You're losing generation of loyal viewers. When you think about Snow White, what is the premise? What is the story?
It's a love story. It's a love story.
It's a dream for a girl to grow up and a man falls in love.
I'm really upset that the biggest theme here is that it's anti-men. She called him a star.
Let's talk about the dwarfs in the original. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, they weren't just background filler, they were everything: the emotional heart, the comic relief, the lovable misfits who brought real warmth to the story. But then actor Peter Dinklage stepped in, calling the dwarfs an outdated stereotype, and just like that, Disney panicked. Instead of evolving the character with more depth and respect, the studio went nuclear. They erased the dwarfs altogether. Early set leaks showed bizarre glitchy CGI, creatures that didn't even look human. Rumors started flying that these creatures were being replaced with a diverse gang of magical bandits, or something equally random. People were confused, the charm gone, the connection to the original totally lost. It got so chaotic that Disney reportedly went back for reshoots, desperate to calm the storm and patch things up, but it was already too late. Critics were fuming, fans felt betrayed and disability. Advocates were furious they weren't, asking for the original dwarfs to be left untouched. They just wanted those roles to be given to little person actors, a community with barely any visibility in major Hollywood films. 7 lead roles gone just like that. Instead of progress, people saw Oscar. Instead of magic, they saw a corporate mess, and by the time the credits rolled, the HIPOC RCY loud and clear Disney claimed they wanted to be progressive.
Because you just can't close your mouth. You just can't be sane, even when you do open your mouth. I think this girl does not deserve a feature-length film, but rather she deserves to be in a padded cell.
But ended up doing the exact opposite. Instead of giving visibility and major roles to a community that rarely gets the spotlight, they wiped them off the map. The chance to introduce a modern, more thoughtful version of the iconic dwarves completely wasted. Instead, we got awkward CGI fillers that felt empty, soulless, and straight up forgettable. No one connected with them because there was nothing to connect to. And then came the brutal reality check. The box office Disney had high hopes for. This one they were banking on a massive opening weekend, $150 million minimum for a remake of one of their most iconic classics that seemed like an easy win. But when the numbers dropped, it was ugly. Instead of fireworks, Snow White crawled to around $43 million. That's not just disappointing, that's a straight-up disaster for a movie rumored to cost over $200 million. Theaters were empty. Tickets were left unsold. The public wasn't just uninterested, they were avoiding it. Parents said they couldn't relate to the new tone the movie felt cold, political, and preachy instead of magical, fun, and family-friendly. Teens said it was cringe, and longtime Disney fans, they were offended, feeling like the remake spit on the legacy they loved. By the second week, theaters were already pulling the film. It was dropping fast, and box office experts were calling it one of Disney's biggest flops in recent memory.
Then they got even crazier, and they decided that the dwarves in Snow White weren't woke enough, okay?
These are roles made for actors of my stature. I can't go out for the Harrison Ford or the George Clooney roles because that's not for me.
Right.
And now it's taken away. I don't feel that's right.
The reviews, absolutely brutal online. Critics didn't hold back. One top-rated comment read, no magic, no heart, just a Joyless attempt to fix something that wasn't broken. Another went even harder. I can't believe they burned this much cash on a movie that insults its own legacy. Even the merch tank tie-in toys, dolls, books, everything meant to ride the hype. Wave just sat untouched on store shelves. Retailers were stuck with product nobody wanted and the shelves collected dust. While fans moved on at this point, one thing was clear: Disney's Snow White wasn't just a flop, it was a full-blown fairy tale fiasco behind closed doors. The chaos was real, insider leaks hinted at a full-blown meltdown inside Disney HQ, with execs scrambling to figure out how the supposedly safe bet went so wrong. This was supposed to be a faithful brand extension, a guaranteed hit. Instead, it turned into one of the studio's most painful disasters in years. The finger pointing started immediately. Some insiders blamed Rachel Zegler's endless string of social media controversies, saying her tone on online turned off too many people before the film even dropped. Others were quick to drag the script, calling it a hollow mess that didn't know what it wanted to be. And then came the real whispers, talk of mass layoffs circling the studio after a string of back-to-back box office bombs. It looked like heads were about to roll, and Snow White was just the final straw. Meanwhile, all eyes turned to Rachel Zegler, her future with Disney hanging by a thread in Hollywood circles. People were already throwing out the dreaded phrase box office poison. That's right. Despite her vocal talent and acting potential, the controversy around her name was getting too loud to ignore. Studios were quietly backing away, worried her polarizing presence might be more risk than reward.
Did the dwarfs make it or no?
Well, the CGI dwarfs did. Of course, that goes back to the original controversy where Peter Dinklage, a very talented little person actor, said, why are we doing that? We've hired a Latina actress to be Snow White. That's progressive. But you're going to hire little people to play the dwarfs? That just seems like a step backwards. And then, of course, Disney instantly buckled and said, okay, we're going to add magical creatures.
And it wasn't just politics or tweets. It was a vibe the Attitude fans didn't feel embraced by this new Snow White. They felt lectured. Critics and viewers alike said the remake came across with a cold, almost spiteful edge. Instead of reimagining the fairy tale with love and care, it felt like the original story was mocked and tossed aside. Plenty of people argued that a modern twist could have worked. Look at Frozen, it managed to celebrate strong female leads without trashing romance or warmth. It gave us independence and heart. But Zegler's version, critics said she lacked softness, playfulness, or even basic likability on screen. She didn't feel like a princess. She felt like a walking lecture, and her interviews didn't help. She practically boasted about cutting the love story as if old school romance was something to laugh at. That rubbed longtime fans the wrong way. Fast, they weren't asking for a helpless damsel, they just wanted a hero who still believed in connection and kindness and love. Instead, they got a film that felt hollow, bitter, and completely disconnected from the magic of the original. If Disney had found the sweet spot, kept the dwarves, preserved the charm, and simply added a thoughtful update, maybe Snow White 2025 wouldn't have turned into a full-blown cinematic train wreck.
And then they couldn't put dwarfs finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive. You'd think the most progressive thing would be get people jobs, and dwarfs want to work. That many scripts that come down the pike.
No, only 7 of them.
That has, and there's 7 dwarf jobs here. But because I think it was Peter Dinklage said this is, this is not right.
There's 7 dwarfs of Snow White, who of course all just disappeared, and now they're the 7 dysfunctional men, I assume.
I guess, what are we going to have? Like a lesbian, a trans person, someone in a wheelchair, someone of color? Like I don't understand. Why weren't the dwarfs enough? But apparently they were too offensive because the most famous dwarf of all, Peter Dinklage, said something negative about it back in 2022, thus ruining the biggest acting roles the dwarfs had ever seen since the creation of Willy Wonka's Oompa Loompas back in the 1970s.
They couldn't have dwarves. Do you guys remember?
Yeah, because Peter Dinklage and all them were talking crap.
So originally they
took
a picture of what the dwarves were supposed to look like?
I can find it, but it was an array. It was the DEI of
dwarves.
Yep. Well, they had to reshoot the film and use CGI dwarves. There you go.
So those guys didn't make it.
No. That guy's 6'2".
And they were like, what? We just want to work. We're dwarves. So, ho ho.
Instead of a magical reboot, Snow White turned into a preachy mess overshadowed by Rachel Zegler's online drama and a script that felt more like a lecture than a fairy tale. Now everyone's asking, could Disney have saved it? Some say yes. If Zegler had toned down the political rants and if Disney had stepped in earlier with smart PR, maybe loyal fans would have given it a shot. Disney has pulled off bigger turnarounds before, but others argue the damage was baked in. The script was so far from the original's charm that no actress could have fixed it. The story didn't feel reimagined. It felt resentful. Critics and fans alike said it came off as cold, preachy, and completely disconnected from what made the classic beloved. At the core of the backlash is this: people want updates, not insults. They don't want their childhood favorites mocked or the lead actress telling them to get lost for having different views used. For Disney, this could be the wake-up call they needed. The nostalgia formula isn't working when it's wrapped in aggressive messaging. Future remakes will need balance, authentic storytelling, relatable characters, and actors who respect the audience. As for Zegler, the lesson is clear: being outspoken comes with consequences. Now Disney stock is down, layoffs are rumored, and several upcoming projects may be on the chopping block. The fairy tale flopped and the fallout's just beginning. Industry insiders are starting to admit what fans have been screaming for years: the live action remake era might finally be losing its grip. Just slapping a classic title on a film doesn't guarantee packed theaters anymore if you don't capture the soul of the original. No amount of CGI, big name casting, or billion-dollar marketing can save it from becoming a ghost town at the box office, and that's exactly what happened with Snow White 2025. What was supposed to be a reimagined fairy tale turned into a battleground, one where the heart of a beloved story got buried under politics, polarizing interviews, and tone-deaf rewrites instead of timeless magic. We got viral outrage, boycott hashtags, and one of the most painful flops in Disney's history. For a long time fans, it was confirmation of their worst fear that Disney's new direction has lost touch with the very audience that built its empire. The million-dollar question now: can Disney and Rachel Zegler learn from this? Because tossing aside your core fan base and mocking a story that shaped childhoods around the world doesn't exactly scream happily ever after. So what do you think? Could this movie have been saved with a more faithful script, or was it doomed the moment Zegler started throwing shade at the original? Was it the casting, the writing, or a bit of both? Drop your take in the comments. I really want to hear what you think. And hey, if you're into raw takes, deep dives, and no filter breakdowns of pop culture chaos, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss what's coming next. I've got more wild stories on the way, and trust me, this was just the beginning. See you in the next one.